welcome to another episode of Neptune Novelties. And for the next few moments, we're gonna travel to a world that's not ours. Well, it's gonna be ours for the next few moments. We're gonna step into the fiction world where everything's either more soft or, in general, more emotional, and you are free to feel those emotions. And honestly, you gotta buckle up because I have a lot to say about this book. Today I'm gonna be talking about the book called Maestro by Auden Dar, which is a contemporary romance book. It's a novel that explores the love story of Aurelia Ramirez Preston and Chadwick David. They meet as 13-year-olds at the prestigious LaGuardia Arts High School in New York, and their friendship blossoms into a deep, decades-spanning love. The story follows their journey from being a teenager to adulthood, navigating the challenges of love, betrayal, forgiveness, and the demanding world of classical music, which you could obviously tell by the title. And dare I say that this has to be one of the top books that I have read in 2025, and it is also on my list of my favorite books of all time now. It's up there in the charts because the way this book absolutely shattered me into pieces and then pulled me all together is insane. This is a pretty long book. The way that I read it, it was like 900 pages, and I swear I just flew through it. I finished it in 7 days, and it's absolutely one of those books that you're like, okay, just one more chapter. And you know it's not going to be one more chapter, but you just, keep saying that until you really have no energy at all. I actually finished this book at 1 in the morning. There were, I think, 100 pages left. And I was like, there is no way I can go to sleep not finishing this 100 pages. And I did. And then I cried. During this book, you actually cry a lot. Well, I did. But in general, I'm a really sensitive person. I cry to movies and books. I cry with these. But you also laugh. And you can really feel love, especially young love. Now, for those of you who don't know, I am actually a musician. Not classical, but I am a musician. So this book felt personal for me from the beginning. But honestly, there are some books, especially fiction books, that I pick up, and when I start to read it, the characters or the dialogues, or maybe the situations, they make me see things from a new point of view about myself. For example, I would see myself in a character, or I would learn something about myself throughout the book. Maybe a character has a habit that I never ever thought about it, and now that that character has the habit, I'm like, oh, I do that too, and I didn't even know I had that habit. Or maybe it's a trauma, maybe it's some sort of psychological behavior that I never really noticed up until the point that I read it in the book. And I adore those books. I adore the fictions that help me learn more about myself than the self-help books. Because, you know, I feel like, I don't know if you're the same, tell me if you are, and tell me if you're not. When you pick up a self-help book, you know, improvements, whether it be about your day-to-day life, or maybe your finance, or your education, whatever it is, I feel like we subconsciously have this guard up, and we are on this defense mode, which is natural because our brains are designed to keep us safe. So we think that the comfort zone, it's just what it has to be. So when we pick up something that's on the opposite side of whatever we lived like or thought and behaved like, so we subconsciously, I feel like, have this guard up and believe that, oh, this book is trying to change me. It is funny because this human changes all the time. Every single second, you're the youngest you will ever be. And every single second, you are not the same person you were only a second ago. So just imagine how many changes you have gone through and how many of your behaviors have changed. I don't really care, maybe you're 12 listening to this, and if you're 12 listening to this, I don't advise you reading this book, but anyway, if you're 12, if you're 15, if you're in your 30s, in your 50s, in your 70s, in your 90s, or maybe over 100, which I would love to have a chat with you if you are over 100, you have changed, and you will change again, whether you like it or not, whether you see it or not, whether you pay attention or not. You're not going to stay the same. And I feel like the better we learn about ourselves, the better we can navigate that. And I understand the nature of always being curious and wanting to know more, maybe about whatever, but I think many people are looking for new things outside of themselves. Maybe they take up on a new habit, a new book, a new person, relocate, try to find new friends, date the person that's absolutely not your type. And honestly, all of those sound fun, and those are interesting and good risks to take. But I feel like many people forget that there is a whole world within you, that there are so many things that you don't know anything about yourself. You know, let's talk about the ocean. Human only knows about 5% of the ocean. That means there is 95% of that world that we know nothing about. And I think human is the same. I'm not only talking like scientific wise or philosophical wise. Forget that. Let's focus on you. You have so much to know and learn about yourself. And I don't think you should miss the chance of having that fun and going down that road. Now, why am I saying this? We haven't even gotten into anything about the book yet. But this book was one of those books for me where I was just there for the fiction. I was just there for a love story because I'm a romantic and I'm a sucker for love, which is why I made this podcast. Well, this podcast, it's more of a hobby, but I've always loved reading, and I like the way fiction takes me to new worlds within seconds. But this book, especially Aurelia's character, honestly everything about the book. But there were some scenes that I was astonished by how it hit home for me. That's one of the reasons that I'm really happy that I read this book. It's because it showed me a part of me that I maybe didn't know was there, or maybe I knew it and I just, threw it under the rug. I'm glad I found it. Even though it was a huge deal, actually I'm still dealing with that realization. But well, I love spending time on myself, so it's fun. Now let's get into the characters of the book. Aurelia, she is a cellist, and she is the main female character of the book, and we get to see everything from her point of view. It's written from her point of view. And her twin flame, I would like to say, Chadwick David, he is the main male character in the book. They meet at 13 in the 90s, actually, where they are auditioning for the entry exam of the art school for this art high school, LaGuardia, which is in New York. The whole story actually takes place in New York City, but there are some scenes where it is happening in other countries, such as Buenos Aires, Argentina. There are hints of other cities and countries. And for me, I really wish that I wrote all of those down in the moment, because I have this thing where I like to know where something happened, and I'm not even kidding. I would actually travel to a specific city or go to a specific place only because it was mentioned in a book that I love. Yeah. Dad, he plays the violin, and his grandfather was actually Maestro. He is still alive during the book. He does face a lot of pressure from his grandfather. Now, his mother is from Austria, and he has an English accent because he was born in London and he spends his summer in London. He has 2 older brothers and 1 older sister. The sister still lives in London, and those 2 older brothers are actually twins, and they go to boarding school. And his parents are also absolutely adorable. Even though they've been married for years, they're still very much in love, and they have at least weekly date nights. And if we ignore his grandfather, which causes lots of issues during the story, that has a good life going on. And then Aurelia, on the other hand, she is the daughter of a single mother. Her mother is from the Philippines, and she is actually the child of an affair. There was a nurse, and she came to New York City and worked for this couple, where the woman was injured because of horse riding, actually. But well, she stayed in New York City and she raised Aurelia. And even though Aurelia's father is in the story, and so is the stepmother, and other than the uncle who actually lives with them in their apartment because he's studying, There are no other families involved in Aurelia's life, but don't you worry, she has enough drama and enough problems with everyone that are actually in her life. And she is more solo, she doesn't have any friends, and she believes that, well, the high school would change it. And this might be a little spoiler. You can skip ahead to one moment later. Well, when Chad and Aurelia first meet, Aurelia has the plan of playing a safe song to please the judges, and Chad actually convinces her to play the piece that she loved. She ends up playing Rachmaninoff's Elegy, which is the song that actually made her pursue playing the cello. And the cello is actually really special for me. I don't play the cello, and I don't think I would ever actually try to pursue it, but it calms me down like no any other instruments can. And because it feels like a human, I don't know how to explain that, but it is full of feelings, and the sounds that it makes, it is directly connected to every single nerve that could control my emotions. And again, another thing I do is that I listen to every single song that is mentioned in the book. Now, this was only one of them, and I already knew that song, but even when I know the songs, I still like to listen to them as they are being mentioned in the scene. So that is how Chad and Aurelia met during the audition, and she is just super nervous, and well, if you are an arts major, you know the feeling of, having to audition for every single thing. And what I loved was that Chad just kept giving Aurelia hope and confidence. I believe Chad had an amazing role in Aurelia's confidence, and honestly, I'm not the biggest fan of Chad. He messes up so many times, and he is not my favorite male character in the book either. But he has his moments, and for those moments, I love him. And one of them is how much he believes in Aurelia. He believes in Aurelia way more than she believes in herself. And even though her mother struggles with providing everything that she needs, and her mother is her biggest fan, still the confidence that Chad has in Aurelia, it is absolutely breathtaking. And I think if you have someone in your life who believes in you way more than you believe in you, then you don't really have to let them go. And at least remember those feelings. Because she's all nervous, and Chad is like, I know it, we both got in, we're gonna see each other every day, and this is gonna be awesome, this is gonna be great. And back then, the internet wasn't a thing, you couldn't just text someone. They had these telephone rendezvous set up, and they would speak every single night on the phone, and they would email each other. And gosh, this is so cute. I really wish that people would still do that. With the technology, it is sometimes too easy. It is good though, but I think we need to take that step back sometimes. So they both open their acceptance letter together on the phone, and these are the seconds that we start to see a young love blossoming. And I absolutely stand by the fact that these two are twin flames. Now, who is a twin flame? A twin flame is like a soulmate, but there is always an obstacle for those two to not to be together. And these two are that. And it is a slow burn. And the very second that you're like, okay, everything's gonna be fine in this scene now, and they're gonna live happily ever after, which they will at the end, but they go through hell for it, honestly. Something or someone is always on their way. Even though at first, well, they bond over music, right? But later on, someone tries to use music as an excuse, and it turns out to be something that actually tears them apart. And that fact, the thing that something can either tear you apart or be the greatest thing you've ever witnessed, there is a thin line in there. And the back and forth in the story drives you crazy, and it is really an intense journey, but in the best way possible. You see them going through those really cute first moments together, and it's nice to have a friend who shares the same passion as you. And as it goes on, Aurelia becomes Chad's muse. And what I love about these two is that it is always mutual, even though Chad is very much stupid when he's a teenager, then in his 20s, then again in his 30s. It's like, I really, really hate Chad sometimes, but like I said, he has his moments. But that's what a twin flame is. Everything is intense and everything is emotional. And no matter what, you cannot escape it. You do have the chance of putting a stop to it, but neither Chad or Aurelia want to. They both truly love each other in a really attached way as well. And sometimes you can absolutely see how toxic it is for both of them. But when you truly want to keep someone in your life, you do whatever it takes, and perhaps some soul ties cannot be cut. And Aurelia and Chad are those type of people who, no matter what, they always find their way. Even if one of them goes on a world tour, they accidentally bump into each other. Again, the universe wants them to be together. And Chad breaks Aurelia's heart so many times. And, well, Aurelia, she also breaks Chad's hearts a few times, but I think I'm gonna have to try to protect Aurelia here. I do really see her as a sister, and it is one of those worlds that I really wish I could live in forever, and I wouldn't want to escape it ever. So Chad and Aurelia, they're friends at first, and then Aurelia's insecurities start to come up. But in the end, he is her first everything, and she is some of his first as well. And actually, she initiates it, which I really loved, even though, Chad, like I said, Chad is stupid, especially as a teen. So he gives all of these hopes and all of these strings, but he never gets it fully done until, well, Aurelia initiates it. And of course, Chad is more than happy. And in the end, he does ask her out. Now, I think Aurelia, she has a harder life. And she deals with so many things. For example, her family is really dysfunctional, especially because of how her mother is still in love with said married man. And he is a terrible figure, actually, in Aurelia's life. I think, well, you know how a girl's father is the very first example, and later on, you could see how the relationship of a girl's father has affected her love life. Well, Aurelia had it bad, being very emotionally distant and still always cheating on his wife. These are not good examples, and that wife, well, she wasn't in Aurelia's life for the first 7 years of her life, but she starts to see her as her own daughter. So there are lots of energies of forgiveness and of very, very complex relationships. Another character, which was my favorite male character, Gabriel. Gabriel, he is an architect, and he goes to the same high school as Aurelia and Chad, and well, he does ask her out, and Chad date blocks them, which was the very first scene that I wanted to have a talk with Chad. But yeah, Gabriel is my favorite boy in the book. And throughout the scenes and the story, you could actually see Aurelia evolving and changing. And I really love how, the scenes where they are 13, you can actually feel that youth in the way that they talk and act. And again, as they get older, the things get complicated. They start to act different. And that's the thing, no matter what has changed, no matter how many years have passed, their love for each other is very much like the very first time that they met. And that gets me really emotional. And I have heard from other people how intense the first love is, especially if if you were high school sweethearts. And if you met when you were that young. And many people, their first is their last. And that is also the case in this book. Because in this podcast we only discuss books with happy endings. I never got to see such story being unfolded firsthand like this. And even though this book is long, it's only 600 pages, I still wanted more. I need this to be a series that's never ending because I need to stay in that world. And that is actually something else I wanted to talk about. Why is no one talking about the depression after finishing one or the most amazing book you've ever read? Is it just me? I don't think so. Because the way that, that book, what book I'm talking about. For me, this book is one of those books. And whatever book it is for you, leave it in the comments. I seriously get depression after finishing a book that has been my everything for the past few days. Nothing could cheer me up more than being back in that world. And all I think about is that book. All I think about is the characters. Nothing is as interesting as that story. I wish I could, rewind and relieve those moments for the very first time again. And the very second that I read the last word on that paper, I need a reread. I need a full circle. Back at page 1, baby. Absolutely addicted. Absolutely addicted. And honestly, I feel like, okay, after this book, nothing is gonna be as good as this. That story ruined every single other story for me. Nothing else is gonna feel like this. Nothing else is gonna be as perfect. And as you are reading it, well, you do know that you are getting closer to the end. You do wanna know more, but you don't want it to end, but you can't have both. And even if you don't finish it on purpose just to keep it, you're gonna have to put it aside. You're gonna have to go back or forward with your life, and it is not gonna include that storyline anymore. And that is so depressing. And I still cannot handle that feeling. I'm still not over it. I don't pick up another book for a bit. And this book was the book that made me want to read again. I was in a bit of reader's block, and no matter what book I picked, I just wasn't hooked. I just couldn't continue. It was boring, or it was too dramatic, or too intense, or not intense enough. There was always a flaw. This book didn't have any, not to me. This was perfect. I was savoring every single word. I was in every single scene that happened. And now all of a sudden I'm not in it anymore? What do you mean? You're telling me that I have laughed, I have kicked my feet, I giggled, I cried, I got angry, I screamed at the characters, and then it ends. And I can do it again, I can reread it, but it's not gonna be like the first time. It's gonna feel different. Honestly, how many times can I reread the same thing over and over again and go through all of those emotions again? I can't get anything done. But I also would like to again read such books because there are a few things in life, I think everything should be balanced, but there are a few exceptions to that. A few things, no matter how much you have of them, you can always have more. The more, the better. Books, love, and money. I don't care how much you have those. The more you have, you're gonna feel better. The more you live with them, you're gonna be happier. So I know there are other books out there. I really don't. I'm just fooling myself so I can get out of this. I actually call this the postpartum because, listen, you literally give birth to a new version of yourself. And you do go through all of those emotions, and you're a new person. So this I call this the postpartum of a book. It has to be a thing. It's not a thing. I don't know why it's not. I'm making a thing. So come join the club if you've ever gone through this. In this book, you can really sense how much love it takes to forgive and how much forgiveness it takes to love. I did not mean that to be that deep. But this book is really intense and it is deep, and there are some things that I think you should check out, some trigger warnings, because towards the end it gets a little dark. And we actually see these characters up until they are in their 40s. Now, the first chapter, it starts in the present moment, right? And then you get all of the flashbacks of the first time that they met, So first 13, and then, they get into the high school and you see them in high school being high schoolers up until college, okay? And then during college, something dramatic happens. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but something dramatic happens. And we see some glimpse, okay? We don't see day-to-day. Because for the high school, we did see day-to-day, but not for college, okay? And then after, I feel like I'm gossiping, after the college period, after graduation, we get to see more day-to-day again. And it keeps on going and going. Then a few stuff are back to back. But honestly, it gives you the perfect time to breathe and process, but also not enough time to actually fully do that. I absolutely have no idea why it's not trending on TikTok. It needs to be one of the books that every single BookTok girl reads, honestly. I don't know why it's not there. And on the other hand, no shade, but maybe a little shade. Some of those books suck. And I could think of a few books that I really wish that they should be replaced with Maestro by Auden Dar. Another cute thing about them is that they share a birthday. And I know that Anya Taylor-Joy, she also shares a birthday with her husband. And I actually find that so cute. I have never met someone who had the same birthday as me, but that's pretty cute. But yeah, Chad and Aurelia, they share a birthday. Their birthday is February 14th, so that's even more romantic. It's Valentine's Day, come on. Lovers on the day of love? Well, to me, every day is a day of love, but you know what I mean. I still love the celebration. And I love these little holidays. And Chad also writes letters to Aurelia. So you got love letters, you got emails, you got phone calls, you got daily meetings, shared passion, shared birthday. And I honestly feel like no human can know you the way you know you. But for some cases, I feel like that's not true. Because Aurelia and Chad's relationship, I feel like they know each other more than they know themselves. The way Chad knows Aurelia, she doesn't know herself like that. And the way she knows Chad, again, Chad has no idea. Chad is Chad. I mean, honestly, even the name, it's a sign that he's not going to be that good. But he is going to be good in some ways, and for Aurelia, those ways really count. But Aurelia is such a lovely name. I'm going to remember this. And, oh, also, funny story, even after, well, like I said, I got depressed after finishing the book, as any passionate reader would. I've been thinking of adding other ways to include them in my day-to-day life. You know, thinking like, well, what habits would Aurelia have, and Chad and Gabrielle and other characters in the book, like Priscilla, Aurelia's stepmother, and Agnes, one of Aurelia's college friends. And well, I already do some stuff that they do. Well, like I said, I'm a musician, so I make music. Well, Chad's muse is Aurelia, so that's unlike me. But I love classical music. I've always been listening to classical music because especially it's been the music that was played the most in my house. So there are so many things about that world that has already existed in my life, so I feel like I was already in that universe in a way. But there are still other ways that I'm trying to include them in my life, because I emotionally and physically cannot handle rereading all of that. And I really don't know how many, if I should do spoilers and tell you specific things. You know what, I'm gonna do more. One of the scenes that also stuck with me is that, well, Aurelia's mother, she's a nurse and she has to work a lot, and at the beginning they're not doing really good, but yeah, finally she meets this patient and she actually buys a house, and so they move to this new home from their previous apartment. And one night Chad leaves a message for Aurelia telling her to play the song Yellow by Coldplay and lay on her bed. And when Chris says it was all yellow, she has to open her eyes. Before she gets in bed, she has to turn off her lights and do that. And she does that, and guess what's on the ceiling? Shining stars. And I laughed and I cried at the same time during that scene. And another thing that Chad does, well, later on, we're still in spoilers, Chad becomes a Maestro. And well, later on, so will Aurelia, but as we're reading that, the main storyline, Chad is the Maestro and he wears 2 watches. One that his grandfather gave him, which is the time that he is. The second one, Aurelia actually gives Chad a birthday present, which is a watch. And Chad always puts that watch on as well, but it is set to the time zone that Aurelia is at. Yes, a moment of silence for that dedication. And it is so casual to him. He always does this, especially when he has a concert. And I know that I'm gushing over Chad, even though I said so many times how stupid Chad is. But like I said, he has his moments, and I really wish I could say more about Gabrielle. And that's because I wish Gabrielle had more scenes. I feel like Gabrielle didn't have enough scenes, and at some points, Aurelia and Gabrielle do get together, but they weren't gonna last. And my heart broke for Gabrielle. Honestly, give me Gabrielle. Like, if it was me, yes, it's no one but Gabrielle, but early in chat, they truly belong together. This story has tragedy, forgiveness, happiness, youth, pure energy as well. And it is all about love in different shapes and forms. And you see that there are wrong ways to show that love. But when you stand by someone in the right way, no matter what, you do get to live that happily ever after. If you have a happily ever after, I would love to hear it. Leave it in the comments or contact me through email. And if you don't, I hope that you saw it in this episode and perhaps read it. I highly advise this book. It's gonna be one of those books that I'm like, yeah, you have to read this. You haven't read this? What are you doing anyway? And when you do, tell me what you think. Thank you for listening to this episode. I could honestly go on because, like I said, this was a long book that I'm absolutely obsessed with. But I didn't want this episode to be 2 hour long minimum. So we're gonna leave it at that. Thank you so much for listening. If you want me to review a book, leave a comment or contact me through email, whether you're a fan or an author. I would love to see you around soon. Take care of yourselves. Laters.